So the release notes came out not too long ago. Some people from the MVP community did have early access to those release notes. So we spent I'm actually reading through them and then maybe blogging about them and then putting sort of a nice summary that will be specific to what the New Zealand people will be interested in. Although it does have a little bit of a personal touch to it, I would say, and based on the the clients that I work with, what are the features that we are most excited about? There's heaps, there's quite a lot of features, and I'll talk about that in my part of the presentation where I just share some numbers about where the investments are and then where Microsoft is putting a lot of their bets in terms of strategic positioning for the platform. But for the first half, Linn is going to start talking about all the changes that have been done to the model-driven apps and also cover some other bits that he's interested in. So without further ado, Linn, over to you.
Thanks, Rami. Okay, so I'll just start with the release wave, how it works and how's the release wave timeline for those who are not familiar with, or for those who are a bit still confused. So Microsoft is releasing 2 release wave per year, and currently we are in the release wave 2, which started in August, where we are able to have the early access. And before that, we got the release notes, and by October, the release wave 2 is going to roll out. And for Australia region, yeah, it will be 6th of October, and this 9th of October that weekend, so you can get more of the for your release wave schedule for your region in the on this particular link. I'll put in the share in the chat after my session. If you are keen to learn what are the new features available in the public preview, you can now go to the Power Apps Admin Center right now, and you can enable the 2023 release wave 2. And you can update it, and then you can see all these public preview features which are available for August 2023. So usually I cover the model-driven app and the cloud flows in those release wave sessions. But this time there are very few features coming in, so I added a bit of a maker experience and also some features coming into the Dataverse in general, and just highlights to some of the deprecations which are coming in the next few months. So there, for the model-driven app, there is only one feature, which is the new UI. I also covered the same thing in the previous session for release wave, because it was also available as a preview in the last release wave as well. So that is called the new look and feel of the model-driven app. So this is the current model-driven app UI that you are all familiar with, and so Microsoft is rolling out the new look and feel, which is a bit of to update the user interface to align with the latest Microsoft Fluent design system. Its preview, the GA date is coming in this October, so that is when it is rolling out to the this release wave. So this feature, there are 2 levels, more of an opt-in feature. So if you turn it on and you can still find some of the functionalities are not working or is still buggy, in the forum thread that I'm one of the foreign thread reported some of the scripts, some of the issues are not working well. So if you find it in your system, you can roll it out. You can just disable it. So there are two levels you can do it. The first thing is to set the default for a particular app level. So you can go to the model-driven app, you can click on the settings, and then you can update, try the new look and feel, which is currently in the preview. So if you turn it on, what happened is all the settings for all the users who are using the app will be enabled by default for this particular model-driven app. But if you have multiple apps and some of those are working and some of those are not working, you can turn it on for the ones which are working fine. And once you enable the 2023 release wave 2 in the particular environment, the users will see this app switcher, the switch toggle at the header of the app to try the new look. So regardless of what you set at the app level, that will be the default value for those users. But even if you disable it, the users can still try the new look and feel toggle to enable and experience the new experience. So that's all for our model app. There are not a lot of features coming in this release wave 2. So the next session is about the maker experience. So in the maker experience, there's only one thing that comes to like that makes me interested. That is setting the solution context for the customizations. So nowadays, if a maker go and creates the apps or tables directly from the make.subpar-apps.com without going through the solutions, for some reason, it is created in the default solution, which is the commentator service default solution. And the publisher of the solution is the CDS default publisher. And as you can see, the prefix of those components become those CR and some digits prefix. And starting from this release wave, once it's rolled out, you can set this. The makers will be able to select any unmanaged solution as the active solution context. So what it means is, let's say you create a solution, unmanaged solution, the default unmanaged solution, and set it as the active solution context. And that means whatever apps or tables, any components that you created directly in the make.subpar-apps.com will create in that unmanaged solution that you created. So that will have your own prefix, the correct one, so that you don't have to encounter this kind of problem. So the next section is the Cloudflow. The Cloudflow, there's also only one feature. That's not a lot. There are some more in the desktop flow, but for the Cloudflow, one of the features that's really is good for all of us is to run a Cloudflow for more than 30 days. So that will be preview in the November and only GA by March next year. So until now, all of the flows instance are timing out after 30 days. So that can be tricky if you have some sort of flow like approval flow. So you wait for approval and then 1 week approval, you escalate to the next level approver. So if you have multiple level approvals, and some of the flows may go beyond 30 days. And previously, what we have to do as a walk around is to restart another instance of the Cloudflow to avoid this 30-day time out. But with this new feature, we can have the flows longer than 30 days. So that will be a good new feature for the Power Automate Cloudflow. In terms of the Dataverse, there's a Power FX formula columns. You all know that's been available at the preview in the Dataverse for Teams since July last year. But this release wave, it will be more focused on the feature gaps which are available in the calculated columns, but not in the formula columns. So these are the features gaps, all these which are not yet available in the Power FX. So we'll be able to see those features coming into the Power FX calculated columns next month. And after that, all these, once the Power FX formula columns have a feature parity with the calculated columns, it will go GA in the December this year. So that means that there's no longer have a preview deck for formula columns, and we will be able to use it in the production for our Power FX formula columns. So you'll be wondering, okay, so we have this calculated Power FX calculated columns, and how about the roll-up columns? And the roll-up columns will be only starting for preview in the January next year, and it will be GA by March next year, so which is probably GA together with the release wave 1 for next year. So since it is still preview in the later next year, we still don't have any screenshots or anything. We all just have to go through the release notes and figure out how it can be. So, but I'm pretty sure since they have the GA date altogether, I'm pretty sure they have all figured out and get all the existing features available in the roll-up columns that will be available as the Power FX roll-up column. So the first release, it will only be just like asynchronous roll-up, just like how it is working at the moment with the follow roll-up columns. But in the future, they will have a support for a synchronous rollup. So that's even better than the current rollup column. So we can have the number of counts of the activities and the total aggregation in the real time. So as soon as we save the record, we can see the updated record in the parent record. So which is a really good upgrade from the existing rollup columns. So this one will be, I believe the new synchronous rollups will come later in the date after the GA. So we will have to see how it goes, what is the plan for the sync rollups. And the last feature that is coming to the Dataverse is associating the activities with the multiple related records. So up until now, we can only associate the activities with one record. That means we have this regarding this particular email, this particular phone call is related to this one particular case. And sometimes we may have a requirement to have the association with the multiple records. Let's say the customer call and inquire about the status of their application for themselves and their spouse. So you have two cases, and then you can associate two cases for this one particular activity, and then you either have to do end-to-end association or you have to just link it to one single record. But with this feature, you will have to able to associate with multiple records, even though the preview date is mentioned as the August 2023. I have yet to see it in my environment after enabling the release wave 2. So we will see, hopefully we'll be able to see it later this month, and it will be GA by the release of the release wave 2 in October. And since we don't have any screenshots available for this particular feature in the release notes, I try to imagine and do a mock-up of how it may look like. It may or may not look like the same in the real feature, so please don't call me out for that. It's just a mock-up screen for maybe we can be able to set multiple regarding or some sort of associating to the multiple records for a particular activity. And then I would like to conclude my session with the deprecations. And the deprecations, especially about the Microsoft Dataverse legacy connector for Power Automate flows. The date is also the same for Logic Apps. If you still have the flows with the Microsoft Dataverse legacy connector, please migrate to Microsoft Dataverse connector as soon as possible. You have the migration tools available for Microsoft. Once you open up the flows with using the legacy connector, you will see a warning on the flow checker like that, and then you will be able to migrate it using the migration tool provided by Microsoft. So that will replace all the Dataverse connector legacy connectors with the new Dataverse connector. But this is only available for the flows created after the June 2020. So if you have flows created earlier than that, you will have to migrate and update it manually, because you won't be able to see this kind of warning available for a migration tool. And if you have flows, the thing is with the migration is some of the features in the legacy connector, which are still not available in the new Dataverse connector yet. So the feature gaps are the connector actions connecting to a different environment other than just the current environment, or when a role is selected, trigger, where you trigger the flow for a selected record. And in the release, in the deprecation notes, Microsoft has mentioned that those functionalities will be available with the announcement, which is due by this month. So we hope to see those features coming available in the Dataverse connector sometime this month. Once they will announce this new features, they will release a date when those will be GA, and after that, those new flows will not be able to create with the legacy connector anymore. And they also announced the timeline where all the existing flow with the Microsoft Dataverse legacy connector will stop working. So please look out for those announcements if you are using any of these functionalities with the feature gaps. But if you are not if your flows are not using any of these feature gaps, I recommend to migrate to the Microsoft Dataverse connector as soon as possible. Okay, yeah, we have just remaining is just Q&A session. I'll go through.
There was a couple of questions by Sarah. The first one was whether any of the PowerFX formula column capabilities or features have gone GA yet. I had a look at the Teams one. I think that was still in preview, as far as I know.
Yes. My understanding is also that they will GA together with the latest feature gaps. So instead of GA for like some of the functionalities, so they will try to have a like GA altogether in the December 2023.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sarah also had another question. I think it was around the deprecation. So there is the trigger that is for the selected record. Has that been sort of replicated in the new connector?
Yeah, not available yet. In the documentation, they mentioned that they will have announcements of those new features availability by this month, August 2023, and they will have a next date where we can migrate and to deprecate the old ones.
Okay.
So if you're using those features, don't worry. Like the flows will not stop working until the new features is available in the new connector, and they will have some timeline. They will give a few months before it's actually stop working. So yeah,
that sounds good. Any other questions? All right, that sounds good. So thanks, Linn. This was very informative. So my side of the presentation is basically going to complement some of the things that you've been talking about. The first thing that I would like to do, so let me start by sharing my screen. That's one. Right, so what I tend to do every time I'm talking about a specific release wave is I do some analysis. So I do some counting. I count the pages, I count the number of features, and then I group them by specific disciplines, if you want. And then I create some graphs that would represent what does that feature look like. So this is the analysis that I did upfront for the latest one. So as you can see, out of all the features that are being released, so on the left-hand side, you've got the Dynamics 365 features or release notes. And on the right-hand side, you've got the Power Platform ones. And as you can see, respectively, you've got 8% and 19% of those features that are specific to AI. So be it Copilot, be it doing a review of an AI-generated bit, be it an AI column, whatever it is. But Microsoft is spending a significant amount of time just going over those AI features and ensuring that they are available to the public. Sorry, just hacking away. And you can also see the number of features that have been released in each one of those documents. So within Dynamics 365, you've got 243 features that were announced, whereas in the Power Platform, it was 62. When I went through the default or the preview elements, I also noticed that some of those features were removed, and that's typically the case because they would think that they are ready to be announced, but then they realize that there is a showstopper in there, and then they would remove them from the release notes. So that's something that happens quite often. Now, the reason why the Dynamics side has quite a lot of features. You will notice that Business Central, for example, has a lot of features. The Finance and Operation also has quite a lot of features, and a lot of them would have to do with compliances and then meeting specific customer needs. that are very specific and in a way like little templates that they generate, and that's why they count as a high count towards the features. However, on the dynamics, on the Power Platform side, it's more around each feature that is enabled as a capability that goes across your entire platform. So things that you can use both for Dynamics 365 as well as Power Platform specific applications. As you can see, there's quite a lot going into the Dataverse space, but then all the other features have more or less been equally invested in, which is quite good to see. Cool. So again, no surprise in there. For those of you that have attended Build, you've probably noticed that there was a lot of talk about ChatGPT. There's a lot of talk about AI capabilities, Copilot, and so on. So the way I see it is that everybody now in the Power Platform is going to get ChatGPT, or is going to get Copilot, or is going to get an AI powered feature. Now, I've summarized them in a few slides, and I'll do a quick demo on the Copilot capabilities for Power Automate as well as Power Pages. So from a Power Platform perspective, we do have, and this is more on the maker side of the experience as opposed to on the end user perspective. So as you're building your applications, as you're setting everything up, so you will notice that there is a Dataverse element to it. So when you want to create your solution, when you want to create your tables, then you can interact with Copilot, and then you can build the solutions that you want to do. Same thing with Power Pages. If you want to build a form, you can go to Copilot and say, hey, Copilot, can you please create me that specific form that does X, Y, and Z? And it will give it its best stab to generate it for you. And then after that, we've got Power Automate. So Power Automate, again, following that same natural language Copilot interaction, you can interact with the model and say, hey, I would like to do X, Y, and Z, and then ChatGPT will go and generate the Power Automate for you, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to stop presenting now, and I'm going to switch to my demo environment. So let's have a look. All right, so first of all, let's start with Power Automate. So I've got Power Automate open in here, so make.powerautomate.com. Now, you will notice that this Copilot feature may or may not be available in your environment. At first, I realized that you can only use it in your US environment because Copilot was only enabled in the US, whereas now I'm noticing that actually it is available in other New Zealand-specific environments. But this is what the landing page is going to look like from now on. So we'll start with that prompt of what you want to build. Tell Copilot what you're interested in building. So you can say something like, I want to send an email after a contact is created. So from template after contact is created. So it will try its best to try and understand what you're trying to do, and it will come up with what the composition might look like. Now you will notice that it will automatically select a on event, on trigger of Dataverse element. So add, modify, deleted, and then it will send an email. So it got those actions correct. So let's see if we can actually enhance it a little bit. I had prepared a little example in here. I think let's try that one. So send an email with a generated document after a contact is created. So we're asking it to generate a document that will be attached into our email. And as you can see, it actually managed to do that. So part of the actions, it went and generated a few cards in here. The first one is to populate a Word template, and then the second one is to create that file, be it in document or PDF format, and then send the email. Now, all of those are not linked together, and even though we specifically said that it's on the created of a contact, it doesn't know that. It just added the best cards possible for you to be able to do your Power Automate. And then when you click on next, then this is where it hands over to the maker, and then they can add all the additional items that you want to do in that specific Power Automate. Again, it is interactive, so you can go and talk to it. You can tell it to enhance what you've done. And maybe I'll demonstrate that a little bit better when I'm talking about the Power Pages. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to go back into my make.preview.powerapps.com. This is my personal environment, and it is hosted in the US, just in case it's not there. But give it a try in the Oceania region, see if they actually have some of those Copilot capabilities. I've created a sample portal in here, and I'm going to click on it and go edit. I'm going to use the new Power Pages editor as opposed to the old Power Apps portal editor. So as it's loading in here, it's loading the new editor. Let's have a look. All right, so it's going to come up with the page templates. It's going to show me all the different options that I can add in there. So what I'm going to do is add a section or add a form. So let's have a look. All right, so in here we can add edit a specific element within a section. So that section was already created, but let's just start with a section. As you can see in here, it asks you what sort of component you want to add into that section. So I'm going to ask for a form. And when I do that, as you can see in here, it came up with a Copilot prompt. So I'm going to ask it to generate an adoption form for pets. So create an adoption form for pets. We don't want to do it for kids. That would be inappropriate. But let's see what Copilot is going to do. And again, it's going to give it its best step, and it's going to try and figure out what does an adoption form for pets look like, and it's going to go and generate that content and then bring it back to us. So hopefully it won't take too long. And keep in mind, this is Copilot. So part of the demonstration that I'm going to show you is that one of the things that you should do is go and inspect what was generated. So it created a name. I don't know why a name would be appropriate for an adoption. You're not going to adopt based on a name, but the age, probably. The gender, yes, most likely. And then you've got other things like type, breed, and so on. So those make sense. But then when you have a look at the gender, it says male, female, or other. I don't think other is the correct term because with animals, most likely you're just going to have a male or female. But most likely, if you want to rephrase that and turn it into maybe male, female, and I don't care. So you have the prompt, and then you can interact with the model, and you can say, update the gender to include male, female, and or just I don't care, for example, and then submit that prompt. So it is that interaction that you're having with the model. You look at what it's generating, it's doing its best to give you what it thinks is appropriate, and then you have a look at it, you inspect it, you send it some feedback back, and then it goes and generates that model again. And then finally, when you're happy with it, you click on OK, and you've got your form added into the specific page that you've got in here. So let's go and inspect it. So as you can see in here, the gender is male, female, and I don't care. So it took my prompt into consideration and updated the model. So yeah, we can continue with that, or we can cancel it. But then let me add another section. And then one thing that you will notice that even if you select text, it will come up with a Copilot option for your text. So you can say, create an introduction for a pharmaceutical company. And I don't think it will care about the spelling mistake, but yeah, let's click on that. And again, it's going to create some placeholders. It's going to go and find some nice and uplifting text about, company name, and how, they are there to innovate and to help the well-being of customers and people and so on. So it did all of that for yourself. But then when you look at it, you may not agree with the tone, you may not agree with the way it's actually worded. So what you can do is either go and edit it yourself, or you can give it some more direction on what you want to do. So you can say, change the tone to sound a little bit more professional. So it will give it its best to change the tone in there and then make sure it's a little bit more professional. The other thing that we could do is, for example, change the length of that specific text and make it more appropriate or something like that, longer, shorter, and so on. So you do have that interaction that you can do with the model to add the different sections. I don't know where it disappeared, but yeah, that's probably a bug where I sort of hovered away and then it lost the text. But anyway, we understand the gist of it and how the Copilot is going to go and help people in different perspectives. So licensing for Copilot. That's a very good question. So Copilot is, the way I'm demonstrating it right now, is a maker experience. Microsoft does not charge on makers, right? So if you want to, if it's something that will help you from a productivity perspective, from a generation of content perspective, from generation of code, from generation of content, they don't charge you. They don't have licenses for that. This is available for free. However, in my next slide that I'm going to be talking about is where you're using it for your end users. And in that case, then it would go under the AI builder capabilities of charging you for the AI capabilities and so on. I'm not sure exactly about what the pricing model is going to be like, but it's going to be the same as AI currently with credits. So as you do specific actions, they will count towards the number of credits that are being used of your platform, and then you have to feed it that way. All right, so now that we've seen what the maker experience would look like, let's have a look at what it might look like in Dynamics 365, or specifically in your Power Platform, and how you can extend it to use capabilities like ChatGPT and Copilot. So some of the most common scenarios that they've been talking about, and you will notice that it's the same capability that has been repeated across multiple verticals that Microsoft is providing. So summary of an email or conversation. That is a capability that they've introduced in customer service. It's a capability that they've introduced in marketing. It's a capability that they've introduced in sales and in Viva sales as well. So it's the same model that they lifted and shifted. Same foundation, same core behind the scenes, and they just connected it to the right information in Dynamics 365 to provide you with those capabilities. Exactly the same way that they're doing the summary of a conversation of an email, they are extracting action points. They are extracting the entities, so the people that are within that conversation, within a contract, within a recorded conversation. So all of that is coming together, and they're enabling those features wherever they see it's fit for purpose and wherever they see that it's going to add value to the customers. Again, given that this is more on the user side of things, this is where you start getting charged, per credit or per specific executions, because at the end of the day, what is expensive for Microsoft is the processing power. So all of that Copilot work, if you've watched the build keynote, Scott Guthrie was talking about the NVIDIA microcontroller chips that actually power all the AI capabilities, and how all the new data centers that they're building have those latest and greatest AI chips in them. So this is expensive to run. It consumes a lot of energy and so on. And this is what Microsoft is going to be charging customers on. So yeah, keep an eye on it. It is going to be based on a consumption base or credit base and so on. So now that we've seen some of that Dynamics 365 capabilities, the rest are basically screenshots that I've taken from the release notes, highlighting a progression of things that are related to AI. And then later on, we're going to have a look at some low-code capabilities and also some infrastructure capabilities. So within the theme of AI, we have columns that are powered by AI. So what does that mean? So you can create a new column in Dataverse, and you can say, this is an AI column, and I want it to be populated with the summary of the text coming from another field, or I want it to generate some sample data based on some other information that is available in there. So this is going to be powered by the ChatGPT model, and we'll be able to add those columns into your data model, and it becomes part of the, like a calculated column or a rollup field and so on. So now we have those AI capabilities. Same thing happens with the AI builder. So you can create an AI model that will go and get this information and then put it into the specific columns, which is what that feature talks about. Cool. So this is actually two features. They're right next to each other in the release notes. The one talks about SharePoint, the other one talks about Dataverse. AI is great. And quite often, you would go and retrieve information that is available in the public, especially if you use the publicly trained models. Now, beware about that because the information may not be accurate. And anecdotally, we can talk about an event that happened in the US where there is a lawyer that went to ChatGPT and generated an official document that was presented to a judge. And because they didn't verify the content of that, by the time it actually reached to the judge read the content and realized that all the precedents that was described in that document was actually fake. They were fake cases. They were fake events. So always remember, it's Copilot, not autopilot. So make sure you do your research. But what this capability is allowing you to do is to enrich the data with information that you have in your organization. And this is in the context of Power Virtual Agent. So if I want to go and ask PVA, who are my customers and where are they located? Where's the majority? Where are the majority of my customers? How much do they spend? And so on. This information, can be augmented from your Dataverse source or from SharePoint. So this is what they call RAG. So the Retrieval Augmentation Generation. So you go and point it to a model that you trust, your data, and then you augment the data coming from ChatGPT based on the trained information that is available in your organization. And of course, privacy is paramount. So you trained your model to retrieve this information, but it's not available to anyone else outside of your organization to go and have a look at your Dataverse information or your SharePoint information. So this feature and the SharePoint one as well is about augmenting the AI capabilities and enriching its capabilities by reading and crawling through your Dataverse and SharePoint data. Now that we've sort of had a look at generating this data, there's always that risk of, you go and say, generate an email based on, for this specific customer, based on the information that is already available in Dataverse. But again, you want to go and validate that this information is correct. You want to have an extra step that is added in there to go and do a peer review and then fix anything that is generated by ChatGPT or by the AI capabilities. And that's exactly what the next feature is about, is to introduce a validation loop out of the box with your Power Automate, with your capabilities, before anything that is generated goes public or goes to a specific customer. So you can have that extra step in here of a validation station, validation loop, where Power Automate is configured that would get an approval before it actually goes on to the next stage and then making it public to your specific customer. Cool. For those of you that have attended the Global Power Platform Bootcamp that we did earlier this year, one of the things that we did was record a conversation, generate an MP3 out of that conversation, and then go and send it to an Azure function that would convert the speech to specific text, and then we can run analysis on that text. Now this capability is available out of the box. It's going to be a while, so as you can see, the public preview is expected in March 2024. So that's before the Wave 1 release from next year. But it is now becoming an out-of-the-box capability. And I must say, it was a bit difficult to set it up when I was going through the GPP setup. The reason for that is because it needed to be in a specific format. You needed to know a little bit about the AI model languages that you're using. It required the generation of a function app, which is a bit of a pro code type of work. But doing it this way is now available out of the box, and you'll be able to feed it some information, and it will generate the text that you want. That goes into the more advanced Dynamics 365 features, where you have what they call the seismic activity. So it actually detects the two channels, the two parties talking on the phone. It detects the length that each person is talking into. It detects the interruptions, for example, and it also detects the sentiment. So it puts all of those capabilities together and provides them as a first-party application that does all of that for you instead of you building it from scratch. Having said that, if you have a specific need or you want to tweak it, you can always build it from scratch with some of those new out-of-the-box capabilities with Power Platform and Dynamics 365. One of my favorite feature that is going to be introduced part of the AI capabilities is to be able to personally to retrieve personal identifiable information, PII. That's a big deal in the public sector, and in fact, it's all around the world. With all the restrictions that are coming from the governments, is to be able to protect personal information and make sure that if we have to redact that for information to be able to be stored legally into a location or into a reporting area, then there's a way out of the box to go and say, go and read this information, identify anything that is personally identifiable, and then redact it from that document or redact it from that text. So again, with the capabilities of AI that have been introduced, now we can do that out of the box. And I think it's really good. It's really useful to be able to do that, because the models currently do understand entities, for example, like like a company or a person name or a specific bank account. It can detect all of this information from within a document. Now all it needed to do is to identify it and then retract it, remove it from the text or the document. So really love that feature, and I think it will have a lot of really useful capabilities in the future. Again, especially in the public sector where most of my customers are, and to adhere to compliance and to be able to store more data and do more analytics on your data without getting in trouble. All right, so I've talked a lot about the AI capabilities. Now I'm going to switch into the low-code section, and then I've got a couple of slides at the end about the infrastructure capabilities. So let's have a look at the low-code. One of the feedback that we've given Microsoft is that we love PowerFX, but one thing that we don't like is how the editor for PowerFX is really, really, really tiny, and we usually have to drag and drop it and make it a little bit bigger. And because a lot of people are using the low code and the PowerFX capabilities as your core code capability, you tend to have quite a long set of functions that do quite a lot of things. And to be able to edit those properly, you need space to do that. So Microsoft listened, and then they looked at revamping how we can actually generate those PowerFX formulas. So as you can see, they've given us a few other options on how the editor can be set up. So you can either have it on top, you can have it at the bottom, you can have it docked on the right-hand side, giving you a little bit more real estate depending on the type of screen that you have. So if you have an ultra-wide screen, maybe you want to put it on the right, and then you can like split your screen, have half of it for the actual code editing and the other half for the content in here. If you use vertical screens, then maybe it's better to have it at the bottom or at the top. But also what you can do is have a full screen capability. So that one on the right-hand side shows you how it can pop up, and it can actually be a full screen editor running in parallel with what you can see on the left-hand side, which is the screen and how it's behaving. So Microsoft really appreciates that, and then is working towards making your maker experience more pleasant, and then giving you more options to do it. Keep in mind that a lot of those capabilities are also VS Code compatible. So at some stage, especially if we're talking, for example, editing the code behind a Power Pages, editing Liquid, editing things like that, they are making them compatible with VS Code. So you can have an IDE to go and edit your formulas and then push them back into the relevant location, which is really fantastic. Cool. Also related to low code, and we did a session, Nathan Rose and I think a couple of months ago. We talked about the low code plugins. So those are PowerFX powered low code routines that you can register the exact same way that you would register a plugin. There's a user interface that is provided to do that. They will be synchronous, which is really good. So they will be executed real time. And you can do them pre and post execution of your routine. So for example, on create of a record, once you're done creating it, then go and create additional supporting records or an additional structure to support what you have in here. And all of that can be done using Lowcode. This is really good. And I believe this is going to be a feature that will kill the legacy workflows, because the only reason why we still use legacy workflows, as much as we love them or hate them, is because it gives you this free option to generate something that is in real time right after a record is created or right after an event is triggered. There was no low-code alternative, even though the legacy workflow was considered low-code. And going through Power Automate would be a bit of an overkill, especially if it's a small task like rename something or calculate something or just do some simple manipulation of the record or creation of something else before you complete the transaction. So now the low-code capabilities provide you with that option. On top of that, they will allow the connection to a database and then the execution of a stored procedure on that database remotely. This could be an input-output type of scenario. So when I create something, I want to call a stored procedure on the database that would return a value that I want to store on my record. Or it could be in the form of, when this happens, I just want to go and trigger fire and forget, trigger a stored procedure somewhere else so that things remain in synchronization or things are updated in both areas at the same time. So again, recapping, two different capabilities. The first one is a low-code execution of code within an event using PowerFX. The second one is the calling of a stored procedure that is stored on a separate database. So the recording for that session I haven't put online yet, but hopefully with that one, once we finish recording this one, I'll edit them and then upload them both at the same time. So you'll be able to go back and have a look at the presentation that Nathan and I did a couple of months ago. Cool. And as you can see, it's actually quite a powerful language. It can do actually more than what legacy workflows can. So doing lookups, which we couldn't do out of the box, doing updates on something that is outside of the scope of the actual execution of the workflow. So there's quite a lot of nice features that are available part of the PowerFX stuff. Still within the low code, I didn't know where to actually put that one, but Bootstrap version 5 is now available in Power Pages. Public preview is starting now in August. So if you're interested in it, you can start testing it. They are providing, with the Pack CLI, a capability of upgrading your existing Bootstrap 3 Power Pages into Bootstrap 5. It will do its best to upgrade the breaking changes. It will not upgrade everything, however. And then it will give you a little bit of a report of all the things that need to be changed and updated automatically and so on. Don't freak out. Bootstrap 5 is not going to be mandatory for a while. So if your solution is working with Bootstrap 5, and you don't have any urgency to go and change it, that's fine. This capability is there just to let you, at least from a public preview perspective, kick the tires, have a look at how Bootstrap 5 is behaving, maybe run the automatic upgrade tool in one of your lower environments or in a clone of those environments. It will give you a report of exactly what needs to change and how much change there is, and that will give you a bit of an appreciation of how big that project is to move from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 5. So yeah, it's when we talk to Microsoft, we ask them the question, like, is Bootstrap 3 going to be deprecated? Is going to be a cutoff date? And it's not on the radar now because that feature is still in public preview. Eventually, further down the track, this will happen, but we'll keep you posted when we know more about it. Cool. Moving on to the last couple of slides. So we're talking about infrastructure now. There's a couple of nice new features that are available there. The first one is how to do a failover when there's an outage and then be able to control it yourself. So right now, if there is a regional outage and you want to fail over to another region, then that has to be done through a Microsoft ticket. So you would raise a ticket, and then Microsoft would look into it. They would probably be really busy dealing with the outage itself, but then you'll take a number basically, and eventually they'll get to you, and then they'll fail you over. Now they're giving you that self-service capability where you can go and work on it by yourself, and then you can go and switch it. One of the things that I'm not really certain about is, does that include a DR test? So can you, without an outage, go and do a failover into another region and then do a DR test to make sure everything is working as expected? That I'm not sure about, but it would be really cool if we do have that feature available. And then moving on to the last feature is the backbone capability. So network isolation feature. So a lot of the capabilities that you use within the Power Platform usually sits within the same region. So let's say you're doing an export to Synapse or a link to Synapse. It will specifically tell you that your Azure Data Lake storage needs to be in the same region so that it can be efficient and it can export the data really quickly. In fact, this is the only supported way. And the reason for that is to enable things like backbone. So by what I mean by backbone is that if you have your Dynamics 365 instance running in an Oceania data center, and then you've got another capability that is running within the same data center, the Azure Synapse, for example, you don't have to go out to the public network, export that data, and then go back into the an Azure network and then push it into ADLS. Instead, you would not even reach that public internet. You would just be using the Azure backbone infrastructure. So everything is within the local LAN, within those data centers, and that provides you with significant speed increases because you're not relying on an internet connection. And also, it will provide you more security because your content is not being exposed to the public. It's just going from one switch to the other switch within the same data center. So less exposure to the public, less exposure to attacks, and so on. And this is going to be available in quite a few of the features that are available. Power BI is something that comes to my mind when you're doing the TDS endpoint. So if you're trying to connect into the database version of Dynamics 365, then if you have a private network as well with the data centers, then you don't have to go through those public endpoints and so on. So I see a lot of potential in there, mainly increasing the speed of your services and then increasing the security of what you're implementing. So I thought that was a really nice feature with mentioning in there. And that's the last of my slides. We do have 3 minutes left. I did have another demo regarding the importing data from Excel, but it's not necessarily something that was added into this specific release. So that's why I thought maybe I'm not going to be presenting it. But let's have a look at questions. Anyone wants to go off mute and then have a chat or ask questions?
Yeah, Rami, the great session. One of the question is for using those generative AI, like will the user need a security role in the Dataverse environment?
So for generating content?
No, generative AI, those copilots using those features. Like, will the user need any specific privilege to configure in the security roles?
Right. I don't think so, because again, if you do have the maker privileges, then those capabilities, as far as I know, those capabilities will be enabled by default. But yeah, I don't think there's any specific roles for that. There is, however, they are working on the what do you call them? The DLP policies specific for AI. So you will be able to set it at the organization level of what your people can and cannot do with Copilot, with AI, and so on. So I think this is how they're going to be controlling it. There's a lot of effort put into securing it and to making sure that it doesn't go wild and there's enough governance for people to be able to see what they should do and what they should not do.
Okay. And yeah, the last question that in the chat is, so you mentioned about those consumption-based licensing for Copilot. So is it going to be an additional license, or is part of the existing license? And if it is licensed separately, then when it's GA, only the users who are licensed for will be able to see those Copilot functionality.
Yeah, I think licensing is something that Microsoft was still working on in terms of how they're going to start charging people. And to me, this is one of the things that might hinder adoption. And we gave that feedback to Microsoft is by saying, hey, people want to know how much it's going to cost. They don't want to invest too much into it if they're going to realize it's going to cost them an arm and a leg and it's not feasible to be able to license. So those are the things that they're working on. But I don't have enough information about licensing to talk about it. And I'm sure whatever I have might have been outdated by now, based on all the announcements.
Yeah, that's all questions in the chat.
All right. Anybody else? If you want to go off mute, feel free to do that. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
I have a question that's not about the current release wave, the next release wave, but something that has already been released. So with custom pages, they're not generally available for the mobile player yet. And I'm wondering, I am having trouble getting an indication of when they might be generally available for the mobile player.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few features like that. I think another one was the enhanced controls that are available part of custom pages as well. They were experimental, and I think now they've finally gone into public preview. But there's not clarity over exactly when they're going to go fully GA. But I can follow that up if you want, and I can ask internally if they've got any additional information. That's one of the things that I've highlighted to Microsoft is the release notes are not talking about things that were in public preview in the previous release notes, and we were hoping that they would be GA. There's actually no mention about them whatsoever. But yeah, we can follow up on that one if you want. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're just over time, but yeah, thank you very much for attending. I think today was a fantastic attendance that I've seen. It's probably a record that we've had. Hopefully you guys got some useful information out of this session. Thank you very much, Linn, for helping me with that presentation, especially with all the coughing. But yeah, hopeful to see you next month, and yeah, we'll upload that onto YouTube. See you guys.